If you have watched Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, then you probably land on one of two sides with regards to the tone shift of the show. You're either on the side that appreciated the first couple of seasons that were fun and silly, what with dinosaurs punching satellites in space, or the side that enjoyed when the series took a darker turn, especially from season 3 and onward, whether because you felt it more properly suited the more serious subject matters and plot, or perhaps you felt it signaled a sign of progression for the characters. In this video, I'm not going to break down which side of the argument is better. Instead, I want to try and explain why that shift in tone took place because it falls under the greater umbrella of life lessons from GX, and specifically the lesson of today's video, which is that life comes at you fast.
Good morning and welcome, my students. I'm Chancellor Shepard, the headmaster here, and you are the best and brightest young duelists in the world.
Season 1 is confined to the confines of Duel Academy, where most characters of relevance are students or faculty at the school. The first half of it, that people often refer to as the slice of life portion of GX, is Judai meeting a bunch of different personalities at the school and just having a good time dueling. Even when the show progresses into its first cohesive arc, the 7 Stars or Shadow Riders, the anchor of it is the 3 sacred beasts which are buried underneath the school, and the lead villain Kagemaru is a founder of the school. To sum up Season 1, it's world building, and then some events happen in said world. As for what the world is built like, let's consider most of the main characters. Kronos is the mean teacher everyone hates, and Daitokuji is the laid-back teacher everyone loves. Kaiser is the top dog of the school, the one who everyone expects will go out into the real world and kill it. Manjome is the child of the rich family who feels like the world is owed to him and looks down on those with less than him. Misawa is the book-smart guy who works hard and aces all the tests. Sho is a kid who lacks confidence and is always being compared to his more successful older sibling. Hayato is the kid who comes from a family business but wants to branch off into his own thing, though must overcome his weaknesses to do so. Asuka is the popular girl everyone loves, and depending on who you happen to be, could be your crush or the girl crushing on you. And Judai, of course, is the kid who's lazy but has so much potential. Along the way are other characters like the kid who gets bullied so he bullies back, the kid who sleeps in class or, depending on what school you went to, gets high, the kid who tries to be like the popular kids, the stud athlete, the Tarzan knockoff, the robot monkey. Okay, maybe those last two aren't par for the course, but what I mean to say is that every student trope you can think of is represented in GX. You see, Duel Academy is not just a school for dueling, it is a perfect symbol for what schools are like in our own world. The characters run into interesting personalities and think, hey, we're gonna be best friends for life, but the next episode or next day or week or year or chapter of your life, you both move on with your lives. And the environment feels like the world. A pimple is the death of you, and every bit of drama that goes on feels like it should be headline news. But in the grand scheme of things, it's simply a fishbowl, attempting to prepare you for what is to come. Enter Season 2.
Jaden lost! His cards!
Season 2 is a rude awakening for our original cast because anyone who thinks he's a hotshot at school gets smacked. Of the students I mentioned previously who go on to duel in Season 2, all of them take at least one loss. Most notable among these are Kaiser and Judai, who both lose to the same guy, Edo Phoenix. Like the student tropes mentioned previously, Edo is also a trope. He represents this idea that just because you were the best in your school or your hometown or heck even your entire country, doesn't mean you're going to go out into the real world and stay on top. You may have been told as a kid that you have a lot of potential, but guess what? So does this other guy, and he's got silver hair to boot. The literal first moment the students at Duel Academy get a taste of the outside world takes them down a notch. Outside world don't care if you were the top of your class or the star athlete or won awards because so did so many other folks. This life lesson of you're not special goes beyond a single character though and permeates throughout the entirety of a season that is obsessed with a fixed destiny. If you thought running into a more talented and better looking version of yourself was a reality check, just wait till you learn that you're basically powerless to the powers that be. Sayo, the lead villain who is controlled by the light of destruction, believes that destiny is set and has full confidence in his predictions. Almost all the students fall victim to his brainwashing them into the Society of Light. The only exception of someone who loses a duel but isn't brainwashed is Kenzan. So the moral of the story is that you're not special unless you have dinosaur DNA. As for the students who are brainwashed, let's consider Manjome and Misawa for a moment. Manjome is coerced by Sayo into joining when Sayo preys on Manjome's desire to defeat Judai and be the best. Misawa meanwhile ends up joining when Sayo preys on Misawa's desire to be noticed. So, elitist kid who feels like the top of the world is his birthright, and nerd who wants to be socially accepted. Both sell out for the chance to accomplish their goals. Sounds a lot like people in real life who take the easy road or betray who they are or flat out cheat in order to feel like they have power, when in reality, they haven't attained power at all. They're simply feeding the machine that continues this cycle of join or die. We ultimately learn that the only power that can change destiny is willpower, which is exactly what Judai demonstrates by being the one to not only defy Sayo's predictions repeatedly, but defeat Sayo himself, and more importantly, the Light of Destruction. And so while the second season is filled with a bunch of hard lessons, it also ends on an uplifting note by reminding us that we can change our course, that just because we're given a certain lot in life doesn't mean we can't overcome it. And if enough of us believe that, then the grassroots movement can challenge the status quo in order to tilt destiny back into the hands of the people.
Why is this happening to me? I was just trying to make things right. And I ended up making things wrong for everyone.
While Season 2 ends with a reminder that willpower is the best power, it doesn't make you indestructible. That's a lesson Judai grapples with over the course of Season 3. Let's break this down into two parts. The first subpoint is Judai's carefree attitude, which takes a turn into tired hero. Judai is known around the block as the guy who duels because he enjoys it. That's why him losing to Kaiser in the first season isn't a big deal for him, and why his friends are taken aback when his loss to Edo in Season 2 results in him not being able to see his cards. Going into Season 3 though, his view is largely intact and hasn't been explicitly challenged until Professor Sato comes along and accuses Judai's laziness for infecting other students. He tells him that because of his feats in saving the world, he should be a role model. Judai says he's no role model and does what he wants, to which Sato says the famous line that's somehow injected into every fictional work: "With great power comes great responsibility." He later defines this as the burden that a duelist bears in his heart, claiming that he has never dueled just for himself and that Judai couldn't understand that. This comes with some irony considering he just acknowledged Judai saved the world twice, and this very duel they're in is one Judai didn't want to participate in and is only doing so because Sato forced him in order to get to Cobra. All that notwithstanding, Judai basically proves Sato's point when he challenges Cobra. He says, "You look like you're really good, let's have a pulse-pounding duel." But halfway through the duel he says, "Against an opponent like him, I can't afford to enjoy myself at all." So we're seeing in real time the moment that Judai's original self snaps. The breaking point is near the end when Cobra calls out Judai for his duels being superficial, what he calls Judai's fatal flaw, that Judai doesn't have any burden on his shoulders to see him through to victory if and when the duel stops being fun. Johan interjects that Judai carries the expectations and hopes of others on his shoulders, which may have gotten Judai through this duel versus Cobra, but becomes its own obstacle, and that brings us to the second subpoint: the amount of obstacles and stress Judai undergoes. Judai comes out of the first two seasons relatively unscathed in terms of his cheery personality, but the events of Season 3, perhaps compounding on Season 1 and 2, take a heavy toll. From the disc duels that are nearly killing students, to the first alternate dimension where folks are stranded with little to eat and being turned into zombies, to Johan sacrificing himself to save everyone, to the final dimension where he sees his friends seemingly killed on his watch. All of this trauma awakens the Supreme King within him, and to the point where it takes control, flipping him from happy-go-lucky kid to hardened soldier. This is a reality of life many of us can empathize with, because we all to some degree lose our childhood innocence as we grow older and face our own struggles. We all have our idealized view of the world challenged, whether that be someone outright telling us we need to grow up, or coming to the realization on our own in a world filled with cheaters and evildoers and pain that all make living life with the optimism of a child more debilitating than productive. Typically, one of two things happens. You mold yourself into the shape of the world and become hardened like it, or you retreat into your shell altogether. Judai goes through both of these, first rampaging through the dimension as the Supreme King, then when he finally is freed, being too gun-shy to duel. The middle ground is where he ultimately needs to get to. I brought up this quote in part 1, but it applies to this context too, where Manjome tells Sho that Judai is suffering now because he hasn't yet cast off his childlike kindness. To beat Yubel, he needs to abandon that kindness and gain true strength. In turn, however, it is Judai's kindness that allows him to understand Yubel's suffering and drive him to the final act of salvation for the both of them by fusing together. So yes, Judai does need to accept his latent power, but he also needs to maintain his kindness in order to see him through to victory.
そいつらこそが本当の仲間さ。辛くなった時、俺たちの未来を支えてくれる。カードを信じる限り、いつだって一人なんかじゃない。未来に絶望なんてするな。
In Season 3, Judai comes to terms with the fact that so many folks rely on him. He handles this burden on his own, perhaps from a place of not wanting to endanger his friends. He requests that his friends not join him on his way to saving Johan, and then again when he opts for every duel in the alternate dimension, knowing that anyone who loses will die. While taking the fate of his loved ones upon himself may be noble, it only accelerates Judai's traumatized state. It's a simple truth in life that if you try to handle all your stress by yourself, your mental health will suffer. Hence, when Judai does return to Duel Academy, he's a completely different person and distant from his friends' attempts to snap him back to his cheery self. This turn in Judai's demeanor is what makes Darkness another fascinating choice for the final villain. Keep in mind, despite these trials and tribulations that Judai has gone through, many of which take place outside of Duel Academy, he is still a student. He still has a threshold of graduation that will enter him into the next chapter of his life, a chapter that will take place outside the confines of that fishbowl. But up to this point, he has been so hardened to the extent that a character like Darkness symbolizes the ultimate destination. A destination where the trials of life become so unbearable that people ultimately give up their hopes and dreams in order to shed the fear of the future. You can't have failures if you don't have expectations. As such, Asuka gives up on wanting to become a teacher. Manjome gives up on wanting to be a pro duelist. Sho gives up on starting that pro league with his brother because of the anxieties that come hand in hand with dreams. This is a realization many people come to, which is why we end up just going through the motions of life without any real vision. I know that sounds bleak, but after all, the villain is named Darkness. In his duel against Darkness, Judai takes a stand against this ultimate destination, saying that very soon we'll be leaving school. It's true that out there we'll come across a lot of things we can't laugh off, but we just have to face them so that we can open our own futures. He then calls out to all the people trapped in the world of darkness, inspiring them to remember the bonds they have forged because it is those bonds that will see them through their fears and into success. Upon the conclusion of this speech, he draws the card that not only symbolizes everything he just said, but is emblematic of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX in its entirety, Polymerization, which allows him to combine Neos with his 6 Neospatians into Divine Neos to go for the win. So like how Season 2 is a wake-up call to Season 1, Season 4 provides the solution to Season 3. It is through this winning move and through Judai's words that we learn of a universal happiness. A happiness that can see us through our dark times, no matter the number or severity of our struggles, no matter how hard life gets. That is, our bonds. Like Polymerization, a card that combines 2 or more beings into a stronger force, our bonds make us stronger. Whether those relationships help us through a struggle or simply provide emotional support, they keep us steady in the tumultuous sea of life. They are the pillars that lift up our sky when it feels like it's crashing down. They are the building blocks for the future of our dreams.
俺はただ走り続けるだけさ。まっすぐにゃー。まっすぐ、まっすぐ、まっすぐ前を見つめて。ガッチャ。
In the words of O'Brien, eventually, everyone changes. That is what it means to grow up. But what does it mean to change? And to what extent does change equate to having grown up? As his final words before departing, Kaiser tells Judai, "You are no longer a child." Judai takes these words to heart and before making his move to fuse with Yubel, tells Sho, "I'm leaving on a journey to grow from a child to an adult." Upon his return, Judai has lost his cheerfulness and duels more for purpose than for the journey. But is that what it means to grow from child to an adult? Is that what it means to come of age? As he faces off with Yugi, the King of Games remarks, "You yourself do not realize the important thing you've lost. You must recover it." By the end of the duel, Judai finally does come to the realization. With this duel, I can take back what I lost. I learned that duels can't always be fun. I learned that duels sometimes come with grave responsibility. To understand that is what growing up means. But there's something else you must never forget. For us, replace the word duels with life. Life can't always be fun. Life sometimes comes with grave responsibility. Yes, there was a sheltered time in our lives when our biggest worry was getting the golden egg sandwich. But eventually, we grow up into a world that does its best to knock us down. Growing up doesn't mean accepting this, and it certainly doesn't mean becoming like it. It means taking it in stride. It means building relationships with folks that make us smile and that we make smile, because those bonds keep us strong. It means there will be good times where we can kick back and enjoy life. It also means there will be times where we'll need to stand firm and face our challenges head on, but with a sense of hope, not a sense of dread. Life comes at you fast. If it knocks you down, jump on its tailwind and fly higher.